Welcome back, welcome back. Micro a la peanut butter sandwiches. Sounds pretty good. I hadn't had that for a long time actually. Right, what I've done is I mean this is gonna be another short stream tonight. I definitely can't be bed too late. But I'm gonna try and add like a game character that we can just move about on a very basic setup, make him punch, and then we'll try and add another guy that and then we'll make the collision detection, see how that performs. Try and make an actual decent collision detection, so I'll make it so you can't just walk through each other. Although most fighting games you can walk through each other, and when I say fighting games I'm talking about Final Fight or anything of that nature, but we'll have a look anyway. So I've got my base game template, which is just a raw thing. It's got loads of commented out stuff, it's got sprites we don't need, but it's a good template. I mean, the first thing I guess I'm going to have to do is try and find some sort of sprite to put on there. Doesn't actually take that long when you get going. I'm going to search. I won't bother getting this onto the display yet, but I might do in a minute, depending how long it take. Well, this does look pretty good. Let's see what we can do here. Oh god, it didn't like it when I zoomed in. This could be a laugh though, look. Just bringing out the GIMP. Alright. See what size they are. Huh. That's a shame. I can't see a punching animation. No, they're no good. They look good, but I just want something with a basic punch animation, to be honest. That's the problem with these. Quite often they're too big. It's very hard to scale them down. This guy looks pretty cool. See how big it is. Oh, I think that's a bit big. Let's put the grid into 16. Where's his punch animation? Yeah, he's not the right size. I mean, of course, when I get serious about game dev, I will create my own stuff, and of course, then it'll be the correct size straight from the word go. I searched for Mighty Final Fight because I know they have really small sprites. But unfortunately, no one's ripped it. This one might be alright. Whoops. Why can't I grow it to the right layer size? See, that says layer to image size, but it's gone the other way around. It's dumb. Just paste a new. I just couldn't be bothered to put the grid back on. I was trying to find a way of not having to keep doing the grid. Alright, he looks a bit better, look. He's the same size as our Wonder Boy. It's a real pain using other people's sprites. I mean, he looks pretty crap as well, to be to be fair. I mean, it looks okay if you're limited on colours, but not when we're using 256 colours. Oh, that's a real shame. I thought I'd be able to get hold of one of them, some of them pretty easily. The annoying thing is I could just rip my own out of Mighty Final Fight, but I'm not going to do that now. It will be the whole stream done. He's going to be way too big, this guy. Ay, ay, ay. Let's make do with this guy for now then. Alright. Alright, so it's tiles of 8 again, but we're actually working in 16. When you get sprites like this and you're just robbing off other people's work, you'll find 99 times out of 100 their pixels are out. You know, you've got to just work by eye. And you'll notice with Wonder Boy, I got it out by like 1 pixel, and it interferes with the gameplay, you know, the look of the game quite a lot. So it's going to be like a 2-frame animation, with this one being the first one. But it'll actually be 3-frame. It'll go bang, 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 and then back to walking. It'll look crap, but it'll be a start, and then we'll be able to draw our sprites to fit in with the animation code, if you know what I mean. There's nothing stopping me drawing my own sprite. I can copy out of like the Nintendo and then use that as a template, a layer, and draw over it, you know, try and make something. This one looks okay, you know, for a small sprite like this, but it's the lack of colour that annoys me about it. Could easily add my own colour to this. Trying to figure out if they're lined up. Do you know what? I think they are. They're exactly in line, I think. Like their feet start in the same spot, the eye starts in the same spot. So let's just create fighter. And then, yeah, they're perfectly lined up, aren't they? Thankfully. So maybe the rest of it's like that with any luck. I mean, some of it looks way out, but there's probably a reason for that, I guess. I don't know why, but he's got quite a few moves, this guy. We wouldn't be able to fit them all into the sprite hardware, that's the problem. Oh, this one looks a bit better, doesn't it? Ha! I didn't snap it to the grid, did I? Idiot. See, that one's not in line, is it? Oh my god. So you haven't been there in a year, but someone's got it there. Does that mean that they want to speak to you about it? Okay, he looks a bit better. And definitely not perfectly lined up this time. Hmm. No, not you, that's good. That looks a bit better. I don't know why they're always backwards as well. Actually, I think I kind of get why. So you'd be in walking state, and then this would be the first one. That's the second one. And then only when he's in this mode, check the collision. Employee tested positive, yeah. Hopefully they'll be alright. Right, we just need some sort of running. Ideally not too many frames. They look the same, this one and this one and this one and this one. So it's basically just that, that and that. Can't line this up. Excuse me. I thought he was on the ground when I got him. Alright, so it's idle and these two are running. I like that position. Don't look like it. It's not wide enough. Right. Definitely these ain't lined up perfectly, but we're going to draw our own eventually, so. Right, finally. Okay, so bring up Emooks tool. Excellent. Wait a minute. We could obviously do the same thing with the head. They don't look exactly the same, but we could make it so they were. Do the same thing we did with the Wonder Boy sprite, but it's a little bit of a needless complication. I'd rather figure out a way of making it a whole sprite. You might, you'd have more detail in the head normally, and you could animate bits of the head. But this is a bit annoying, the way it's laid out. Do it like that instead. Right, so of course all I'm going to do is just replace these. Also change the sprite count. We can work it out now. We've got 4 per sprite and we've got 5 frames of animation. It's 20. Now I've got to get it lined up. It'll be 32, won't it? Yeah. Alright, we'll just drop them in there. It's going to be a little bit out of line, that, isn't it? But again, it doesn't matter. Okie dokie, we've got some sprites in there of some kind at least. Oh, I haven't pressed the right button yet. Right, what can we do with them? We'll leave all this because we will eventually probably want it. I found it's better to have check keys above the wait so that it still does that even when it's waiting. Or before it's waiting. I might have been talking rubbish there, but I found it was better, especially for that last game I made with the rock, paper, scissors. I think all these are blank. Oh, we have got face. Don't need that. Let's just delete it. Let's call it player. So his default pattern is obviously idle, yeah? If we're going to make a table, I mean, I don't think it's necessary actually, but we could do that here. But instead, let's just do constants. Like pattern ID idle equals 0. Run is 4, or is that 3? I like to number these because I'm a bit stupid sometimes. Yes, you basically knock one off, but yeah, they're not all named the same. But so yeah, 4. So of course these relate to only the first frame. Like idle only has 1 frame, but this has 2. So it should be 12. We'll count it just to make sure. So this is 5, 6. Yep, 12. And again, we know that's got 2. Okay. Player draw. We've done these before. It's loading A with first a slot. Just put 0 for right now. And then it wants the X and Y. But first we've got to do next reg. I think it's 3, 4, but I'll check it. Shouldn't have deleted the one I just deleted because that would have been helpful. But yeah, it is 3, 4. So that's the slot register. And now it knows what sprite we're uploading the attributes for in the following registers. So again, we're going to have a word for position X. And we're only going to have a byte for Y. So because that's a word, we'll load it to, with HL. And we only want the lower bit. Or byte, I mean. Use A. I keep putting pounds instead of dollar. So player Y is a byte, like I just said. And that goes into 3.6. And now we're at attribute 2. So we've got attribute 0, attribute 1, attribute 2. Here's what attribute 2 does. We're never going to care about the palette for a long time. We're just going to use the same palette for the whole game. We're probably worried about the mirror though on a game like this. I'm going to take a drink, 1 sec. Excuse me. Yeah, so we do want a variable for this basically. Oh, and the x8 is there anyway, I forgot about that. So again, we'll load HL with the player X. We'll have a variable for attribute 2. First forward a palette. And then it was the mirror. Is the chat fast? That's better. That's good. Because I've got 0 dropped frames as well, which is excellent. I think my problem was my internet was just playing up that week, like that few days. Because it was all of a sudden fine. It was fine, and then all of a sudden it wasn't fine with the same settings, you know. So hopefully it was just a temporary thing. I put it down to a 1 second delay, I think now. But obviously then there's another delay on top of that. From Twitch, I expect. You know, just the general network. Okay, man. Hello, you're a visible lurker today, Ped. How you doing, man? Happy to have you lurking. I made rock paper scissors overnight. It's quite a fun little sidetrack. And now I've decided just to make like a side-scrolling shooter, a side-scrolling fighter, but just a character for it right now. But I'll flip back to that rock paper scissors later, just to show that off. Although the video is on YouTube, I uploaded it already. We're going to load A with the attribute 2. And we need to OR in the most significant for X. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, nice one, Ped. Nice one. I mean, it's definitely nothing special. That it's just a very simple. It was nice to scale back the difficulty level, and it's like a full game basically already. Oh, yeah. I was going to install the latest C-Spect, but then I realised I'm going to have to fix that memory problem before I do that. You know, the empty memory. Anyway, that's attribute 2. I should put that next to the next reg. Attribute 3 is definitely going to need a variable. We always need that. Mainly for the pattern. And are we going to need attribute 4? Do we really want to magnify? Oh, we are going to need relatives. T is, well, T means it's a composite sprite there, by the way. We are going to be using this, but we're not going to use composite sprites. Can't remember what H is now. I looked it up the other day, but I have to look it up again. Oh, H is 4-bit sprites, which we're not going to use right now. Okay. So in other words, we want him to be visible. We do want E, because we're going to use attribute 4. We want a default pattern to 0. So we'll use both of them. So here's the optional one. And when we're using relative sprites, this is the only all we need to update them. But first you have to initialize them. Just call it init relatives. So it'll actually start the same as that. Could probably have just called that, but well, maybe that's a good idea actually. It hasn't been that long since I've done relative sprites, but I'm trying to remember whether I need to put the slotting in there again. I've got a feeling that you don't. Let's just try not, and if we get a problem, then we'll remember that and add them back in. So this is relative 1, and I'll do the little diagram again. Like that. X is now not a word, it's a 1 byte offset from where the player is. And it's in pixels, so we want it to be 16 in other words. 16 to the right of the origin. Zero for Y. If we use relative pattern relative, see how that's got a slash there? So if it's the anchor sprite we're defining, then it's worrying about what the x8 is. But if it's only a relative, it wants to know, well, it doesn't care about x8. Instead, is the pattern relative to the anchor? We're going to see yes again. But that never needs to change unless we want to mirror them, which we probably do. I believe that the mirror will still apply because it's a relative, so we'll try just setting that as a 1 and leaving it there. Yes, everything off except for that one. Attribute 3, pattern ID. Now remember, this is relative. That's it, yeah, it's a signed integer. Good point. Ooh, I'm a little bit worried, a little bit unsure if E is required for the relatives. Probably yes is the answer. And then 1 means obviously it's 1 above the pattern from the anchor. And the 4th one, we don't want it to be composite. So we'll leave all them 0. In fact, that whole thing's 0. Okay, so we got 1. I'm tempted now to try it. Oh, we've got to do the player's attribute 4. All 0s again. So you call this one time at the start, it initializes the anchor and the relatives, then we just move the anchor and changes other attributes if we need to. Let's give that a whirl, see if it draws correctly just with the head there then. In fact, let's just have player init. And then because we're bound to want to do more in a minute for that. Hopefully that should be enough to get it working then, just to show us a sprite. It's going to be at 0, 0. Oh, I've made an error. You know what it is, don't you? I haven't included player, but also there's some other problem. That doesn't exist. Okay, it's running. And we're only seeing the top left. So that's definitely not right. Let's try this slot. Wait there. Let's make a constant for player slot. Then here we'll have player slot +1. Now that below does happen before this. So that's all happening, and then this. Oh, it's opening in the wrong place every time. Look at that. It's all the way over the other side of the screen. For some reason, the window's not remembering where it was or its size anymore, even though it is set to do that. Look at that. Oh, you can't even see it on your screen. Hang on. That's weird. You can't. It's not showing up on your screen. On mine, it is. How can I show this? Wait there. Do you see it? So it's split all the way across there like that. But it is there. But when I went to this screen, you don't see it for some reason. Look, you're only seeing her. And that is really strange. You're not seeing the whole screen there. Weird. Oh well, let's not dwell on it. You'll just have to trust me when that it was up there in the top right, the other half of the screen, the other half of the head. And that's weird because I'm sure this is in pixels. It's probably something to do with one of these. Maybe it does need to be composite. I don't know, I'm guessing a bit there. The same things occurred. That's weird how you can't see the top right guy. Nah, it's honestly not too large. I've tried that. It's so weird. What's weirder is that that it's drawing it there. That R is about rotation. It's nothing to do with that. Extended anchor sprite. Yeah, so let's turn that one off a sec. Yeah, it was odd that. It was very, very odd. Never noticed that before, but that definitely has to be a 1 there. Ah, I see. This is for the relative, and I'm using unified. So I have to have 0, 1 at the start there like that. I can't remember what PO is. Palette pattern offset or something. Palette offset, something like that. That should work now. Let's give that a try. Yeah, that's much better. Let me just check the stream. Yeah, so you can at least see that. Alright, let's get the rest of him drawn. So the reason I failed there was because you have to have a 0 and a 1 there. I was just looking at that and using that, but of course we have to use that for the relatives. That makes me wonder, do I even need this slot thing? And the answer is yes. But now we just need 2 more slots below it. Should have copied that. So that one's there. Then we want pattern 2, that's the attribute 3. We want pattern number 2. This time X offset 0. And Y is 16. Let's do the last one. This time it's pattern 3. And everything else is the same except for that is all the X offset is also 16 as well as Y. There we go, finally he's in there. Karate Kid. Karate Nose Man. So let's make him punch, I reckon, before we make him walk, just to switch it up. Normally it's the other way around. So punch starts at number 12. It's the pattern offset. And the 3 after that are the relatives. So they're always going to be the same. That's why I've hard coded that in there. So we just need a way of setting our anchors pattern to something else, and that's it. The rest will follow. It's how to do that tidily, isn't it? With the Wonder Boy game, where we added the throwing of hammers and everything, I don't think it was a HDMI thing, or it might have been actually. You're right, because it cuts off the top, doesn't it, and the bottom. I bet if I'd have lowered it to 32 on the screen, it probably would have been right. You'd probably bang on there. But with the Wonder Boy, I'd implemented badly a kind of state machine where one state could become another and so on over and over, and you constantly do checks moving it on. But the problem arose where I had jumping and walking as 2 distinct states. Then I added attacking, but then I needed a way to go back into jumping, and you know, it wasn't impossible, but it became very messy and unmanageable. You know, I decided it would be better to write something new. But the idea is pretty sound of having a state machine. You can when you're drawing a frame to the screen, like when I call a frame, that's 4 patterns in this instance, is 1 frame. So when you draw that frame, he can only be in 1 state. He can never be in 2 states. You know, he can never be running and attacking on the same frame. So it makes sense to have a list and to have a switch so that when you draw it, you just check what state he's in and then you set attribute free accordingly. Let's try and hide some of this now. It's getting in the way already, isn't it? We should never need to look at them again. Not for a long time. Normally I have an update loop here. And then I have my switch statement in here. But maybe it would be better to have... No, I think that is the best way. But we'll have a separate routine. Does it need to be a separate routine? It's basically going to be show correct frame. Yeah, let's make it a local label. So we don't need to name it player. I don't want to use the word frame. It's a tough one. If I use the word sprite, they're all a bit ambiguous or whatever the word is. Let's just call it anim frame. And let's not call it get, let's call it set. Really, by the word anim frame, what I really mean is set its attribute free. You know, set its pattern. In fact, pattern. Let's do that. Pattern states idle walk punch. This is where it gets really tricky to try and think ahead. What if you do want to be able to, let's say you had jump in here as well. But what if you do want to be able to punch in the air? All of a sudden this goes out the window. I mean, one naive approach could be like attack jump or something. You know, you could maybe set them into that and get away with it. But normally you have to try and keep it to 1. There'll be logic that depends on this being a... What's the word? A switch, you know, like... I don't know the real word for it, but it's going to depend on it being a single state. One of only one of many, you know. The second you have a 2 happening. So, for example, you might want to be checking to go idle when you're walking. You don't really do that when you're jumping and you let go of the keys, for example. So then that gets into complication where you might have to suddenly check in 2 states for the same thing, and then if there's loads of states, you might have to check in like 7 out of 10 states or something. So the idea I'm trying to think of is a more generic way of doing the animation, more fluid, some sort of priority style thing, so that, for example, punch could always take priority, as would walk. They all are high priority though, that's the thing, except for idle. Like when you press jump, you have to immediately jump, you don't want to delay. No, the idea is still solid, but how you transition between these is the key. Good evening, Moz. How are you doing, mate? Good to see you. Just gonna roll myself a smoke. I was trying to have a sort of debate with myself there about a better way of doing these states, but I've just came to the conclusion that these are fine, but the way we transition between them is that's the key. Because there should be a way of actually interrupting a state from any other state. You know, there should be a way of controlling which states can interrupt other ones. That's what I'm trying to say. For example, jumping, you can't interrupt that with walking or idle, but maybe you do want to punch in the air. And idle, yes, you can interrupt with any of them. So we need to come up with some sort of way of doing that, and it's not going to be easy. For now, let's just make him punch when we press space. Set current pattern. This is going to do our switch statement to check them states and draw attribute 3 correctly. Or fill attribute 3 with the right data. Of course, we'll need a current state. I think anim state does sum it up quite well. Because that's what it is, really. If not, I might be able to put pattern state, I guess, but current pattern. Let's call it current pattern just for a change. That's a good idea, actually, isn't it? Let's comment them out and pretend they're not there. What we've actually got here is where the patterns start. And what I was about to write was about to check through all of them, and then depending on what one it was going to set attribute 3 to be one of these values. Why not just do these straight away, actually, when I think about it? So we'll just have current pattern. Do we even need current pattern though? Let's think about this. We've already got attribute 3. As long as we realise that we're only wanting to play with this 6 bits here. In which case, it doesn't need to be done in update. So we don't need any of that either. we're just going to set it when we change. I've already thought of some problems with doing that though. That's like, you know, when we're punching, how will we know we're punching? We're going to have to check this guy, and he could be one of two values when we're punching. No, I don't like that idea. I'm going to go back to having the states there. Let's call them pattern states. And we probably do want current pattern state. Because when we are in a certain state, we do need the update loop to move us along to the next frame of that animation. It's very simple to do just a punch animation or just a walk and hard code it in. But the reason for my pausing all the time is I'm trying to imagine other scenarios where my code would make it a pain. For example, player animate. Well, if we're in the punch state, it wants to go frame 1, frame 2, and then back to idle. So that's very different to walking, which just wants to continually cycle A, B, A, B whilst you're holding the direction, you know. So it's two different things. At the moment, and this might not be the cleanest way, but this is the way my brain's going to do it today. We can use these local labels like this, which I'm loving. So that is actually player animate.idle. And yes, it's hard coding, but at least it's a little bit cleaner than what we had before. So now we can check that state. So yeah, you know, it's exactly the same as what we had before, but I don't know. Gradually you learn things, don't you? Going over the same ground again and again. Started to use jump relative. I think that saves a tiny bit of space and uses a tiny bit more processor. What could be the complete inversion of that. I think that's what the case is. But I've noticed a lot of people use it where you can, so I might as well do the same. Okay, so all this routine cares about is what state we are in. Now, we could either have 2 frames for everything, which already flips the idle up. We'd have to, you know, we'd have to special case the idle because that's only got 1, or just add another frame. We've already used quite a chunk of the patterns here, look, if you notice. We've used, I'd say, about like nearly a quarter of our patterns. Still rolling this smoke, sorry. It's, we could either make sure they all have 2, but that's not very robust. Or another way, as well as probably lots of others, would be to have a constant for each one to tell. There's probably lots of other better ways of doing that, but at least now we know how many patterns are in for each one. When we're in here, we know what state we're in. If we also have current pattern index, maybe, trying to think of a good word. Current pattern frame. I get really hung up on names sometimes. Pointless, really. What do they call it? You know, in like a movie making business, they have stills that make up the images. I think it's called a frame. So this one would start at 0 and tick up whenever we change the frame. Let's call it anim frame. Ah, yeah. Frames or cells. Frames make sense to me. The only problem is it gets used for a lot of other things as well, doesn't it? They can get confusing. You tend to reuse the same words all the time in programming, or at least I do. So remember, this routine, this isn't gonna, it needs renaming because this isn't gonna actually animate the player. This is just gonna draw the right frame at the time, you know. Somewhere else, what all we'll have to do is increment this to draw a different frame. But actually, if we do that times by that, no, it's not that. So if we did this value times by that, we wouldn't need to hard code anything. Let me try this. Right, now it is part of the player update. I'm pretty sure I'm making a big mountain out of this, but I just mentioned that I've put this constant here of ×4, you know, so we could times it by 4, but this will never change. It's the same for every one of our sprites. So rather than using the processor to multiply, if we know it's times by 4, we just do add a twice. And pattern ID punch. Or I don't like this pattern. Pattern count should be sprite count. Because of course there's 4 patterns for each sprite. So it's going to go to 12 and then add on this times 4. Let's load it into B and load A with attribute 3 variable and or B. In fact, before we do or B, hang on. No, what I actually want to do is set it to 0. It's set for them front 2 bits. But that's not going to work. I want to make sure all these are zeros. Oh, of course, I just need to do the opposite. Yeah. Then we're all in. So this now remains unchanged, doesn't it? And we just have a new pattern ID set in there. We know he's already at idle before we do anything, just by where we initialized him. That's just as a test, just to see if that works. The reason I'm doing all these local labels is you'll notice the label names are much shorter. They're just relative to the routine they're in, which is great. Otherwise, every time I had play, I written there. All I want to do here is set his state. So I want to be able to, when we receive an input, we just want to change his state, and then the animation will be handled by the frame counter. But to change his state, do I want to make that local label? Let's do it. We're going to jump to it because it's going to return straight after anyway, and then it's going to come out of this and back to here. But do we care about A or anything? I don't think we do. Nah. My fingers, I can never hit the right key anymore. There's nothing stopping us changing these routines, you know, if we don't want them to be local anymore. It's very simple to... I shouldn't get hung up on these things so easily. Okay. So if we press space, we're going to change his state to punch. It's going to then call set correct pattern. It's going to find that we're in punch. It's going to jump to this punch, set his new animation frame. Currently, we're not calling draw every frame, or are we? Oh, we are. And that's probably wise. So that's going to update our player's anchor. And attribute 3 is going to get hit into the next reg there. And it's going to change him into that first frame of the punch. That's what I'm hoping anyway. And no, it doesn't. Definitely not. Ah, we don't call player update anywhere. I like to have a game update loop like this, and you'll find on a complex game there'll be like dozens of different routines getting called. Like I have an update loop for each. I call these classes, you know, and if it's something that's going to move about on the screen, it has an update loop basically of its own. That's maybe another thing I can look at, combining some of those. But that's pretty much what this is serving to do. Alright, let's try it this time then. Still no joy. Slightly surprising. Because we do call check keys here, the proper check keys routine. I'm just going to pop that right there just to make sure. Nah, it didn't make any difference. I'll leave it there for now. As long as it happens before the update loop, it should be good. Ah. I think we just need to make... I haven't loaded it into the actual variable there. So it's left in the register, but not cached again. Hopefully that'll be... Hopefully. Well, It changed the anchor, but not the sprites, the relatives. So let's look at our initialization there. And again, load sprite tools, which has my little bit of notes here. I believe that that is pattern relative. I haven't looked at the docs, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So as long as that's set, I thought it would be okay. Ah, it's not. Oh, that's x8. So on a relatives, it needs to be set. I think it is. It is. Damn. It looked like it was behaving as if they weren't relative patterns. I'll have a quick skim of the docs to make sure that is pattern relative. I found it. So that was wrong, what I said. PR means the palette. That is actually the palette is relative. And this annoying little bugger is the pattern relative. So we don't really care whether that's a 1 or 0, so we'll leave it. Vice for 3DO. I'll tell you what, I just installed Vice on RetroArch. It works really well, like better than the actual standalone app. Because you have loads of extra features that come with RetroArch, you see, like turbo and all sorts of other things. The screen modes you can set, like widescreen and all that sort of stuff. Different pattern, different filters and all sorts of shit. Yeah, so anyway, before we get stuck, our attribute 4 needs to have the 0 bit set. Well, hey, little Karate Kid. So we've, excuse me, we've proved yet again that we can switch states at button press. You know, it's simple stuff, but we've done it. The hard bit is being able to prioritize those switches, like I was saying, you know, without having a massive spider's web of code. There's a way of making it like, so there's a small logic gate, a bit like this, you know, where we'll check, but at the moment, my little brain does struggle with that. Thanks, Mike. When I say about my brain struggling, what I mean is, by the time this gets complicated and we've got punch, kick, jump, walk, idle, I'll end up with copied bits in here, like if walk, return, if jump, return, and all that crap, you know, copied and pasted in to other ones. And that's what I'm trying to avoid, but my brain just literally cannot think of a way around that. Okay, so we've got them working. What next? I think we should make the punch actually animated now. And then we'll make him walk. So to make him animated, we're going to want I already hate these names. Because not only do I hate the name, it's the fact that I can't reuse that. You know, that's in the player, fair enough. But what happens when we have an enemy? He's going to be animated. I'll have to call it enemy animation. You know. Oh well, let's leave it. So current anim counter. Anim frame delay. Are they all going to be the same though? I don't think so, to be honest. If we think about this as 50 frames per second, and we want a walk maybe to cycle once every half a second, so I'd say 25. We've had problems where these don't seem to match up with real world time. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but we'll see what happens. I've seen examples online where people are using milliseconds and then they're loading BC with things like 5,000 to get a 5-second wait. So I need to figure that out really. That looks really good. I could never figure out how it worked. And again, delay is probably not the best name, but kind of makes sense. So I'd say maybe a whole second for the punch. Just trying to think. You'd probably want his punch arm to stay out for... I'd say you'd probably want the punch to like not have an even an equal number for each frame. That's what I thought, Micro, yeah. But I mean, he is going to come out quickly because his frame just literally changes to that. But then it's like, how long do we want to stay in that frame for? And does it want to be equal to the halfway in one? Let's make it equal for now and just leave it at 50. And if we need to make it better, we will. So this is just setting the current pattern. And in my mind, I'm thinking it's best to keep it doing not the whole thing. Try and separate it a bit. So when we tick up the timer, remember this is going to check our current anim frame and just do the pattern. So as long as we set the thing before that, or at any time really, but make the IDE bigger. Do you mean the text? I could make it that bigger if you want, yeah. It's pretty large now, my screen. Fair enough. I mean, it's more the size of the font, isn't it, that you're worried about. That's huge on my screen now. Yo, Ped, I'm just reading your message. Just gonna roll myself another smoke. 1 sec. I'm gonna read it at the same time. I see, that sounds complicated, yeah. One day, there probably is a way of doing like some sort of delta time trick. There must be a way. No problem, Tobias. Tobsa. You're welcome, mate. If it stresses me out too much, I'll shrink it down a little bit, but I'm just gonna roll a smoke right now anyway. Problem is, you can't read much of the code there. It's quite complicated now, isn't it, to view what bit you're viewing. What's an MS count delay? The jerky movements thing is something I suffer from on this next dev, definitely. Millisecond. Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm still rolling this smoke, so I'm reading the messages at the moment. Is it worth delaying, PED, just based on the frame counter then that we use instead? That's probably a good shout, you know. If we cache, where's that frame counter? If we got current frame count, current anim counter here. If we actually put what do I want to call this? Anim start frame count. Make that a byte. I actually have a word here. So most of the time you'd be alright unless it was really high up and then it looped back. We could just, that only get... Still going to be jerky though, isn't it? Hold on to frame counting. Whoa, thank you for the bits, Micro. Enjoy your family time, man. Thank you very much. Okay, Ped. That's fair. How about if I cache this? What do you reckon to this then, Ped? If I cache this value at the time I switch the animation, and then I increment that. Or no, in fact, I just sub it from that to check how many frames I've had. I'm only animating frames of animation, you know, I'm not moving the character. But it's different with the Specky, you see, because they're all the same. It's not like with a Windows application you have to do delta time. Every processor's different, you know, could be all running at different speeds. But with a Specky, they're all the same. But as Ped's saying, they do 50 and 60 on the next. 60 animation frames at 60. I mean, if you had 60 frames at 60 hertz, you'd probably just see a blur on the screen, wouldn't you? Or you'd probably just see one frame the whole time. Well, I had an idea of it. I've got two ideas now. But if I set this at the point of switching animations, and then I do frame counter, which is the 16-bit number. Yeah, frame count. I take away anim frame count. Anim start. Okay, yeah. That's brilliant. Yes, so I was doing anim start, but what I really need is anim end time. Speak Spanish? No, sorry, my dude. Very much English only at the moment. The only thing, Ped, if I'm using the 8-bit counter, that's gonna tick over quite quickly, innit? Like, what happens if you start if you start it at 240 and your frame time is 30? German? No, no. Sprache die English. Yeah, that sounds so much better, Ped. You're dead right. The problem is, should I use the 16-bit number? I think I should. Because let's say I want an anim length of 50 frames, and this is at 230 at the time. Surely that would create a problem, wouldn't it? Let's just have that as a word. So this will equal frame count at switch plus frame length 50 frames. Here's where I press space and set the state punch. So at that point I want to Is 8-bit enough for under 100? Okay, that's awesome. 50 would be fine for me. 1 second. In that case, I'm changing this from a word to byte. Make life a lot easier. Where's it gone? Here. So when we set the state punch, we want to create this end time. And we do that by getting our frame counter 8, which is the 8-bit one. I'm just reading your message, Ped. This frame counter is getting ticked up every single frame, regardless of what the animation's doing. So when we first call this might be 200. Oh, maybe I should just set that to 0 first. No, because then the other things can't use it. It's fine. Alright, thank you. I'll trust you. You're always right, so I definitely trust you. So let's put a little comment. Calculate anim end time. Anim punch delay. End time is A. This is still ticking up every frame as normal. So now we can just simply check if that is more than or equal to this. And then switch frame. Call one of these again. Thing is, I'm trying to keep it tidy. Perhaps this could be its own routine, because we might be doing this more than once. Like, there's 2 frames of animation for punching. Ah. Yeah, good point. Because I'm comparing it against that still anyway next time, aren't I? Less plus equal test. Oh my god. See, that I don't understand yet. Oh, if I miss a frame. Let's see how far we get with this. What I'm just thinking is, we've got set state punch here. In a minute, I'm going to want to set it to punch B. Like, this is just punch A. This automatically does that. As long as we change this to 1. So I can think of multiple ways of doing it, but I'm trying to think of the cleanest way. Because of course, when we change it, this number, we do want to do that again. We want to reset this anim end time. Let's make a routine. Get anim end time. Now we don't need that comment. Okay. Oh. So we'll set the current pattern. Somewhere we just want one that checks that timer. I'm just going to write it directly in here for now. Finish rolling the smoke. I'm going to read your message, Ped. I just missed it. Oh, I see. You want me to use equals rather than more than or equal. It is definitely calling it every frame. The only annoying thing here is, like, I don't know what, here we know what state we're changing to, but now when I check the anim time against the frame counter, I at this moment don't know what state I'm in. I don't really want to do the compare all over again. So perhaps this is better in its own routine, and then we can call it from the other ones. No, it is fine, because we're just going to increase this number, aren't we? God, this text is big. I forget what it's called. Current anim frame. Just need to increment that. Or not always increment it. It needs to go 0, 1, 0, 1. But if we had 3 frames, it would have to be 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. And of course, some you need to be able to go like 1, 0, or 0, 1, 2, 1, 2, or something like that. Right now, this we're just going to keep it so it is literally just 1, 2, 1, 2, 0, 1, 0, 1. We can do that just by XORing. Yeah, that's it. It's like I'm trying to create a state machine. You're right. I did actually mention that earlier on in the vid. I see. Well, thanks for that, Ped. You've actually reaffirmed exactly what I've been wondering about for the last couple of days. Currently, my current approach, I end up with spaghetti code. But it's not that bad. It's not like a complete mess. It's just a bit of a web. Sometimes you have to add something into 3 or 4 routines, the same thing. But I think tables are what I need to explore to start doing stuff in data tables instead. But you can only go at your own pace, can't you? You know. Especially, most of the code I do, I just create on the spot. You know. Yeah, I was trying to do that. I was trying to draw it up, honestly, when I wasn't online. I've been looking. I've known about finite state machines for years, but I was looking them up on Wikipedia, looking at the turnstile example, all this crap. But it's hard to relate it to your actual code. But animations are the only thing normally that I use these finite state machines for. Although in assembly, I've been using them for a lot more things as well. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It does, Ped. As long as it's something you can only do one thing at a time of, it should be in an enumerated list that you switch through, basically. The state machine terminology comes into me when you start switching from one state to the other, yeah. Anyway. So, anim timer is in B. Anim end, I mean. And the timer is in A. and we only want to act if the timer is if the end time is less than the timer. Let's just try it. Oh no, it's got to be equal, hasn't it? You just told me that. There's a lot of locals now. Yeah, I see where you're coming from, Ped. So if you look, we've used A and B there, but we don't need to worry about it anymore. So we can just load A. It was called current animation frame. X or 1. So it would be either a 0 or 1. Pop it back in there. We've changed the anim frame, so we actually do want to change the timer again. I hope that doesn't cock it up and make it so that they equal the same every time. I think I might have to put this below the set pattern. Let's try that. I don't think it's going to matter, but we'll check. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Once I've made some that work in code, I'll put it into data, but I'll have a working template to move it from, if you see what I'm saying. Because if I make it in code, basically I'd have to do a thing now, wouldn't I? Like such as animations data. And it would have to be something like, you know, idle. Then you'd have like 50 for the amount of time for the first frame, 25 for the second, 2 to say that there's 2 frames, something like that. Is this what you mean? But I've got bubbles of ideas in my head about doing it like that, but I can never put them into practice. Exactly, impaired. I'm not completely wasting everyone's time, am I? We'll get, at least you get to see a bit of it working, and then one day we will try and put it into a data table, because I'm sure it'll be a lot cleaner doing that. I believe this might just work now. It should just cycle through the anim frames. What we're going to find is that it's going to just punch in and out all the time. It's not going to go back to idle. But I'll be happy with that if it does that right now. Oh, we have an error. So let's find out what that is. 150. Next. Oh, it's dot next, isn't it? Let's call it set next. Ah, there you go, it's working. And the delay is a reasonable amount of time. It's about a second, which is what we want, what we put in. That's good. So here's what I was kind of talking about a minute ago, where it can get messy. This is all well and good and it works quite nice. In my opinion, that's really clean, you know. But it cycles the animation. But if it's a punch, we want it to go 0, 1, and then reset back to being idle. Without having a massive load of spaghetti, as we've just been discussing in the chat. It's very tempting just to do some sort of check here, you know, load a current state. And then if it's punching and it's 1, set it to idle, you know. But that's the spaghetti, that's the start of the bolognese. Because as soon as you have a few states and then you have a few of these, you're having to do checks all over the place. Let's have a quick think about this. My current idea, my current way of thinking is to have some sort of check here. I think it's only punching right now that doesn't want to, you know, needs a special case. Set state idle. Let's just try that then. Oh, hang about, hang about. When we actually set it to punch here, perhaps we could do a check afterwards. Don't know, either way's a bit nasty. Well, the spaghetti's going to start because I'm just going to put end punch. And we've got to do 2 checks here already. That's why I'm pausing. We've got to check A, is it in the punch state? And B, is this 1 at this stage? Is the frame 1? Oh, it's even worse. Because if I do cool Z end punch, actually, yeah, that'll be okay. Because then it's going to come back out and still set this back to be 0. And we're just always going to go to idle. 2. There's always 0 and 1. Is the only frames for every state, except for idle, which is 0. Animation class. I mean, there's really not much concept of classes in assembly. I sort of like force the concept of classes on them with my style, but this code could go in any file anywhere. I think it's not that bad, this, to be honest. Once you zoom out, it's not very big. That's not that bad, really. Like a character structure, or whatever you want to call it. The beauty of having these local labels is, eventually, when I want to make the bad guy, I can copy near enough this whole thing and just change the name of that top function to baddie. And almost all of it will work, you know. But as you see, if it gets to the next frame and it happens to be in the punching state, because I'm going to check here. And return if it's not. And then I'll just force it to be idle. Boiled. Don't know, man. I mean, when I write C#, I'm the master of like making everything as generic as hell. It's like what I end up getting stuck making everything too generic. But with assembly, I find a lot more hard coding is involved. Just learning the processor. There's also a lot of limitations compared to, you know, there's not like can't just do, you can actually do multiplication on this, but it's not like, you can't just do x times y or something like that. You have to load it into register D and E and all that. And so we've forced the state into idle. Jump back here, it'll go back to 0. It'll then be in the idle state. It'll get to here. We need something similar to that. However, with idle, there is only one. Now, you like, I'm still only learning myself, so half the stuff I say is probably like technically inaccurate, to be honest. But having said that, I know enough to just fumble along and get some stuff working, you know. Which is the fun part. Like, it's not that fun if you just know how to do it. It becomes a chore. It's like when you're learning is the fun part, isn't it? Because I used to be very good at Unity. And C#. I didn't use any add-ons. I always wrote my own stuff. But I still got to the point where I suddenly needed like really good graphics for my games and that, because okay, that's a good shout. Do you know, I nearly did that. I talked about doing that, didn't I, when I wrote this set state punch here. I don't know, I don't mind this though. It's almost working fine. All I've got to do is just set him idle. here, yeah, we actually have to set the attribute to be the idle one. We're gonna and so we only keep them front ones. Then add pattern ID idle, which is 0 anyway, so pointless. Let's just not use that. We don't need to because I know it's 0. Oh, I'm going to leave it in there in case we change it. Yeah, I'm a bit like that, Tobsa. I end up just trying to make everything generic so that it's just reusable. I'm even guilty of doing that with assembly, you know. I try and it gets you into problems. Sometimes the best solution is just to get it working, you know. I did have a little play with Python. I couldn't really see the difference between Python and C# other than the syntax. I just thought, what's the point in learning that when I already know C#? But then all I've really done is just always games, messing around, trying to simulate physics and adding input and velocity and all this rubbish, you know. Let's see if that works then. Does it reset back to idle? Yes, it does. Ah, but there was a bug the second time I done punch. Especially when you do the ZX Spectrum 48K, you got to yeah, there's like no hardware for anything. I was kind of expecting that to work, to be honest. Awesome, awesome. See, I'm just such a novice. Just a bedroom coder. I don't really know the difference between the front end and back end, except for when I'm talking about website and web, whatever the word is for that, web development, server based and stuff. Nice, nice. I bet that's a good skill to know, mate. I'm tempted to explore PED's approach with a data-driven state machine. I see. I read the whole thing of PED's message then. Yeah, it's messy whichever way you do it, isn't it? If you try and become involved with allowing lots of different animations that aren't even, just hypothetical ones. No, I'd done some back-end server stuff when I'd done web development years ago. I made a website that I hosted myself using WOMP, and then created MySQL and something else to make it log in. Took me absolutely ages. I never did it again after that. I was like, oh. I also did make a master server from a game once in Unity. Again, that took me many weeks, and I asked about 1,000,000 questions online. Most of the time, RESTful programming on back end. Sounds good, man. I'd love to make money out of programming somehow. Get a job would be ideal, but I think I'm a long way off that. And also, assembly is definitely not the way to focus if that was my real goal for here. But perhaps this way isn't too bad. It just needs a little tweak. I remember having this exact problem with games I wrote in Unity in the early days of Unity. You had this state machine thing, but I used to just code it, and it was a lot like this. But it did used to work. But then I used to run into problems with, for example, when you don't want to have to hard switch a state, you want it to automatically switch on a certain time. Node.js. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know nothing about it. If I make a website, I just use HTML and CSS template. And I just use Notepad. That's probably why none of my websites have ever been successful. I did make a FIFA website once and I got 80,000 hits in 1 month, but then it died a month later. What's going wrong here then? I'd bet it's where I do this. So when we're in the idle state, it shouldn't care about what current anim frame is doing. Joe, I've never even heard of that one. In Germany, we have a school for becoming a certified programmer. Yeah, you can definitely. There's like you can go university and do all sorts of computing science over here, but it costs a lot of money. When I was actually a college kid, there was no courses at all. There was one computing course, and the guy didn't really know what he was talking about. I don't think. Like he knew what he was talking about, but it was a bloody slow-paced course. He didn't learn anything that would be useful today. Of course, if you went to university and did a master's degree or something, I'm sure you learn everything you need to know about computers. That's good for you, Tobes. I actually did work for a big company once where they paid for me to go on courses and that. But it didn't work out, unfortunately. A long time ago. When you're young, you think everything's easy to come by, don't you? So you take things for granted. But... So let's just take another look what's happening and try and visualize what's going wrong. It's hard with this, though. But it works the first time you press it. Oh, it's what... Oh, see, that time it failed. Is it something to do with the overlap of the frame counter? Joe's a text mode. The Unix terminals. Linux terminals, or like, is that? Was that bad, Moz? It sounds cool. I've heard of that language as well, but I don't know what the hell it's about. Static HTML saying go away. That's brilliant, man. The irony of it. The irony of a website that just tells you to go away. You should post a link in the chat. Really old programmers. Not that old. Probably older than you though, Tobsa. I don't know. I'm guessing. But I've done a little bit of lots of languages. But I've never done COBOL. And believe it or not, I haven't done Python, even though I do mean to learn that one. Ped7gods.org. I've clicked it. Go away. Yes. I wonder if I should just set the frame count to 0 every time we change frame. Because that way it's never going to go over 50. Now, this is just a test because if I leave that there, frame counter becomes useless for the rest of the program. "21 programming since 19. Good for you, man. You got started young. See, I started when I was really young, but never ever got into it until I was about 30 or 29. And I'm 38 now. But I've just done crappy jobs my whole life, you know. I wished when I was 19, I'd got stuck into it. I tried when I was like 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, but I never got into it for more than like a week. Then a lot of things went wrong in my life and I got a lot of time on my hands and I was like, right, I am going to learn it this time. And that was about 10 years ago or more. Well, about 10 years ago. And I got into Java at that stage and started writing games, and C# when that first came out. And they were beautiful. I started learning loads from them languages. Mainly because there was a lot of people online at the time that were willing to help you about those. I think this might have fixed it. It has. So the problem was the frame counter ped. I don't know if you're still here. But this temporary fix has fixed it. So it must be the overlap. I'm using equals, like you said. Thankfully things have moved on since COBOL. That's brilliant, mate. That's flipping awesome. See, if I'd have known that when I was 21, that's all you have to send them. I'm there writing all this generic crap that they teach you to write. Never got anywhere. Okay, fair enough, Ped. Well, I just put this here that resets it to 0 every time I switch a frame. And now it does work, so the only problem is I can never use frame counter 8 anywhere else now. No biggie, it's no biggie. Let's try and slow it, speed up the punch to see what it looks like. Oh, I'll show you. Let's shrink the code 1 notch. There we go. Right. That is the temporary fix, Ped, that we obviously don't want to keep. And here is the comparer checking that. This bit here. If you didn't see it, let me know and I'll go back. That's fine, yeah? But then this here, of course, renders frame count unusable for the rest of the code. If I wanted to use it somewhere else, it shouldn't be called frame counter now, it should be called animation counter. So it works with that there, every time I hit space. Oh, it didn't work actually. Yeah, it stopped working. I just got lucky that time. Okay. I think I just need to reset one thing then, somewhere. End time. Get end time. It's probably just calling get end time. Yeah, that's it. There, get end time is that calculates what the end time is. So that might need to be in the idle. As well as the punch. But the thing is, there's no other... No, because it doesn't tick through the frames in idle. Get anim time. Oh look, note that it's hard coded to punch there anyway. Oh well, I'll figure it out soon. Yeah, that's what I've done, look. Set state punch, get end time. The annoying thing now is it's hard coded, isn't it? I'll have to come up with a register for it. Let's do add B. Yeah, no problem, mate. I'll figure it out. It's probably something stupid I've done. It's getting late in it because I did actually do a stream like about 30-40 minutes before this as well. So I'm going past my meds time. Yeah, that's gonna be fine. Punch delay, won't it? Remove the zeroing. Yeah, the zeroing actually I found didn't actually solve it. I just thought it did, but it just seems to not do the first frame sometimes of punch. And look, that looks wrong. Well, it's got totally stuck now. Hmm. No worries, no worries. I will figure it out. Yeah, maybe I could just set it there, couldn't I? Yeah, it should. Because look, here's where it gets set back to 0. Because we know it's 1 here. We change it to idle, return, and then it goes XOR 1, so it should be 0. I think you're right though, yeah, that's what we have to do. Make sure current anim frame is 0 here. Yeah, it seems to not reset back to idle straight away sometimes. It's very odd. Oh well, that's much better. Yeah, I think I'll leave it here for the night. And I'll have a play around with this tomorrow and try and get it working. And no matter what, I'll come on tomorrow and try and do it online as well, live, you know, get a bit added to it, get it moving about. Yeah, for sure. And I'll have another think about how to do the data-driven approach as well, but my mind's a little bit hazy on that, but I'll give it a try. Yeah, sleepy time, innit? I can't handle the late nights like I used to. They add up on you, don't they? Anyway, thank you all for watching. It's very much appreciated. Hope you all come again and visit. Tomorrow I'm going to stick with this and try and make it so that we can walk around and make an enemy and do the collisions. Shouldn't take that long. The animation's one of the hardest bits. So the scrolling we've already got down. We've got a couple of methods for scrolling as well. So we can do a tile map level after that. And then it'll look pretty impressive once we've done all that. But yeah, that's a long way away right now. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your night, guys. Good night, Moz. Thank you for being around, man. Much appreciate. Take it easy, guys. I'll be here tomorrow with more coding. Have fun. Night.